Okay, so hello and welcome to this webinar on building custom search pages in Drupal 8. I am Ivan Zujic and I'll be your host for this webinar. And I've been using Drupal for about 10 years, and in that time, I've played many roles. I've been a front-end developer back in the day when it was simple, and also a tech lead and also a Drupal developer in general. And for the last 5 years, I've been writing a lot over at webwash.net. So if you want to learn more about Drupal, head over there. But I'm sure you guys are all fully aware of that site. So what will we be discussing today? Well, there's a lot to get through. And I just added an extra slide at the end because I want to add in a bit more information, useful information. So we'll first look at search in Drupal 7, the current landscape. And then we'll look at what's changed in Drupal 8 because things have changed as you would expect. And then the last few points will be part of a massive demo where we'll go through how to create custom search pages in Drupal 8. And that's new for the core search module. And how to create a search page using views and specifically a filter, how to modify search results, and also an introduction to Search API and faceted search. So first, let's talk about search in Drupal 7. If you're looking for a basic search page, you can't go past the core search module. It's one of those modules that you set and forget, you install, and you just leave it. Until the client comes over to you and says, can we have this on the search page? Can we filter by, some specific requirement? Or when they enter something in, they'll say something as, I would expect that this page will appear right at the top. And that's when, if you have to fix issues like that, the search module isn't a great module. It's really useful for those situations where you turn it on, you index your content, and that's it. So it's one of those modules, set and forget, and you're done. And also another thing which I'll just quickly mention, and let me just bring up this little pointer here, is that it's very hard to change the URL of the search page. So notice how the search starts with search/node. It's very hard to change that. And you might think, well, why don't I just use a URL alias? But you can't do that because the keywords, as I've demonstrated here, actually get passed in as a parameter, an argument technically. So you can't use URL aliases to even change it. So you're stuck with search/node unless you were to write your own custom search page, or if you were to modify the search module. Let me get rid of this pointer. Okay, so if you want to customize or create a better search, you can use views for it. And so what you can do is create your standard page or listing of content using views, and then add in a filter called search terms, which you can switch on as an exposed filter, and that will allow a user to enter in search terms, and the index data will be used to filter the results. Now, I've had good experience with this filter creating admin pages. So let's just say you're building a course website, and then you want to create an admin page where the editors can view all the courses. And what I've done in the past is I've put in the search term, and it allowed them to do keyword searches and then have those results returned in a nice table. And this is where the actual filter becomes very, very powerful, because in Drupal 7, you can create results which returns like a summary. Actually, I'm not quite sure. I know you can do it with Search API, but it's very difficult to get kind of the highlighted keyword result out of views, unless you're using something like Search API. And then you have Apache Solr module. Now, this module's been around since Drupal 6, I think, and then Drupal 7. And it uses a third-party search engine, okay, called Apache Solr. Now, for people who don't know, Apache Solr is a search engine. It's open source, and it's written in Java. And There's a bit more configuration involved if you want to use Apache Solr, because you need to set up Apache Solr. So you need to set it up on your infrastructure, so your hosting infrastructure. Now, a lot of hosting providers, such as Acquia and Pantheon, I'm not quite sure about Platform SH, but I do know Acquia and Pantheon offer Apache Solr. And you would use Apache Solr if you're looking for a better search experience for your users. And also if you're dealing with a lot of content, because let me go back. The core search module saves everything into saves the index in the database. Now that's okay if you have 100 nodes, 200, 1,000 nodes, and not that much traffic. But as soon as you're dealing with 10,000, 100,000, a million nodes, and you have to deal with a ton of traffic, that's where you should look at using Apache Solr. And also you can do things where you can load balance it and do all that type of stuff, okay? But the problem with this module is that you can only use Apache Solr. And if you've used Drupal, you'll know that developers and maintainers love to abstract everything away. So then Search API came along. And this came along in Drupal 7. And Search API abstracts the server and the index. So you can set up an index which uses the database to store its values, or you can set up a server to use Apache Solr or even Elasticsearch, and then you configure your index where you specify what fields you want indexed. Also, you can write a bit of custom code to add a bit of pre-processing on the data and do all these type of things. Now, Search API is a powerful tool, but it requires a bit of configuration, and I will show you a lot of that stuff. Well, the Drupal 7 version, the Drupal 8 version of it later on in the demo. But with many modules in Drupal, it's a powerful module, but it takes a bit of configuration, and also you need to know what you're doing. But once you understand how to use it, then a whole world of possibilities open up. And then you have Facet API. Now, facets are those things that appear in, say, a sidebar that let you drill down into particular terms. And I'll just go to the next slide and I'll show you an example here. So this is a facet on the tags field, where if you search for something using keywords, it'll return all the tags, and then it allows you to drill down further into other results. And you might have multiple facets. And facets are really useful for search results for, say, listings, or something like apartments, or even I think Airbnb utilizes facets, and like job search results. Okay, facets are really useful for those type of things, and also products as well. So if you want to drill down based off price, and in Drupal 7 there's a whole bunch of facets. You can even have a slide of facets and stuff like that. I'm not sure if that's been upgraded for Drupal 8, but it's all there. Okay, so that's our look into Drupal 7. Let's now look at Drupal 8, because things have changed, as you would expect. The first major change is that the core module allows you to create custom pages. Hooray! We can finally create our own pages. But there's a few things to take note of, and let me turn on this little highlighter thing, is that all the pages start off with search/something. But as I was mentioning earlier, in Drupal 7, the keywords are passed in as an argument. In Drupal 8, it's passed in as an actual get parameter. So you can use URL aliases to change the path, which is amazing. So finally, you won't be stuck with an ugly search URL. You can change it to whatever you want. But again, if you want to build custom pages, it's just best to use Search API. Now, the next thing is Apache Solr search module won't be upgraded for Drupal 8. They recommend you use just Search API, and that's it. And that's kind of good, because now we have all this effort targeting and pointed towards Search API, so we can make Search API great. In Drupal 7, there was a lot of effort going into Apache Solr search module and then search API, and it was kind of like fragmented, but now everything's going into Apache, search API. And I even remember, I think Acquia funded, gave a bit of money to help upgrade search API to Drupal 8, which is good. And then another change, Facet API has been renamed to Facets. I have no idea why, it just has. I don't know. That's one thing I noticed straight away. There must have been some architectural changes. Maybe they want to just rebuild everything from scratch, but yeah, that's been changed. And just before we jump into the demos, I wanted to quickly mention a few other modules. Okay, so let me just jump out of here. And these modules are just extend the functionality of the core search module and also search API. So the first one is custom search, and this lets you alter the search box. Because believe it or not, I've spent a fair bit of time just modifying the search box on the left-hand side. That lets you, enter in keywords and then hit search, and it redirects you to the search page. So this module allows you to do some pretty advanced stuff. So before you open up, your editor and modify things through the template, have a look at this module and see if you can achieve whatever you want to achieve using this module. Now, the next one is search exclude. Now, with the core search module, there is no way to exclude certain content types. What if you, what if you don't want the basic pages to appear in your search results? Because most of the time, those pages are just about us pages, privacy policies, or terms and conditions, and you don't want that to appear in the search results. Well, you can use search exclude, and this has been upgraded to Drupal 8. I think there's a full, well, there you go. There's a full version. It's a stable release for Drupal 8. Then to go one step further, search exclude NID. So this is pretty much the node ID. So you can exclude a specific content page using its node ID. And there have been situations where I've had to do this in the past. And there's a stable version for Drupal 8. I do enjoy seeing stable versions of Drupal 8 now, even though Drupal 8's been around for over a year, which is great. So if you want to exclude particular nodes, do it this way. But then there's always other ways of doing it. You can do it through the pre-process. There's other ways. And then search API attachments. Now, this comes from, I think, a question that was actually asked just recently on WebWash. How do you index PDFs? Now, when I got that comment, I really can't answer that in a single comment because there's a lot of parts to it. But there are modules that you can look at. And I'm not sure, is it a Drupal 8 version? Okay, there's an Alpha 4. Okay, fair enough. But essentially what you can do is, with these attachments, it utilizes the Apache Tinker library, and that extracts the text out of a PDF and then indexes it with your index into your index of choice, being a backend, a database index, or a Solr index. And then you can easily do keyword searches on your PDF. So essentially, you're not searching the PDFs directly when you perform a search. What happens is when the system indexes the PDFs, it'll extract the text out of it and then throw that into the index. And that's it. So have a look at it. The Drupal 8 version is, just test it out. But essentially what you also need to do is set up Apache Tinker library, which is similar to, is like a third-party library similar to Apache Solr. So just be aware of that. And you can see that, it's available for Acquia search as well. Oh, nice. Okay, there you go. So if you're on Acquia hosting, it should work. Give it a go. All right, now it's demo time. Yep, okay, sweet. All right, now it's the demo time. Okay, cool. So I do have my cards here. I've got my little card where I kind of explain that points out all the little demo parts that we're going to work on. And what we're going to do is first look at creating a custom search page using the core search module. Okay, so let's head off and do that now. And just before I begin, this is my Drupal 8 my stock standard Drupal 8 site. The only thing I've done is downloaded some dummy content using the Devel generate which comes with the Devel module. Because trust me, there's nothing more painful than trying to build search pages and you don't have good content. Even this dummy content is pretty terrible because it's just weird words. But it would be great if somebody could create a contrib module where you could, I don't know, pull in a bunch of car data or something. I don't know, something like that. That'd be pretty cool. And then straight away you have nice facets. It's a good idea. That's an idea. Anyway, so to create a custom search page, what you need to do is go into configuration and then scroll down to search pages. And if you've used the Drupal search in the Drupal 7 search, all this looks pretty much the same until you get down here. And this is where you have the new search pages. Okay. But just be aware that modules have to integrate themselves with the Drupal search. So right now, it's really just content, which is the node module, and also users, and that's it. You couldn't use this to, say, index taxonomy terms. You could technically do that using Search API, but you couldn't do that using this. So if we want to create a search page, let's create one here, and just click on add, add new search page, and I'll call this site, just so that it's different, and then I'll give this search/site. And then here under content ranking, you can adjust the ranking. So let's just say you want blog posts with comments to bubble up to the top. Well, then you can adjust the influence here. Or if you have a blog that pushes out content consistently, and for you want the most recent content to appear up the top, well, then just adjust it here. Okay? So you can do all that stuff here. And then just click on save. So right now you can see our search page, our custom search page. And if we go directly to it, we should be able to enter in, I don't know, this is a keyword that actually works. We can enter in a search and then it returns results. Okay, that's nothing groundbreaking. We can essentially do the same thing with content, but it's just good to know that it's available for us and we can create search pages, which you couldn't do in Drupal 7, which is awesome. Now, another thing which I want to show you about the core search is that this search box on the left. Now, if we search for something in here, you will see that we are redirected to the standard search module. Okay? The standard search page. But what if we want to be redirected to our site page, which we just created? Well, the way you do that is by setting a particular page as default. And this is important. You can see here that we have status of default and the rest are set to enabled. So with the site, just click on the drop down and select set as default. And then that's now our custom one is set as default. Let's go to the home page. And let's go right to the home page. And if we search for a keyword search, it'll redirect to our custom search page. Okay, it's pretty cool. Now, as I mentioned, if you want to modify this search block, look at the custom search module. Because pretty much, well, you can't really customize that much here. You can change the title and that's about it. So that's pretty much the changes to the core search module. Now let's look at other ways of modifying or creating search pages. Now I mentioned that another way of creating a search page is by adding in a filter on a view. So let's do that now. So let's go into structure views. And what I'll do is I'll just create a basic view, a basic table view. Okay. So I'll call this custom search. And I'll go create a search page. I'll give it a table and then click on save and edit. And you can see here our results. Okay, it's just a basic page with tables, with a single table. Now let's add in a filter. So just click on filters and search for keyword search keywords, and then click on add and configure filter criteria. And make sure you select expose this filter to visitors if you want to allow users to filter. If not, then you can add in your custom keywords here and kind of hard code the keywords. And then this opens up extra options, and then just click on apply. And now you get this nice little search keywords. Okay? But I don't know if you've noticed. Notice how nothing really changes here. The ordering doesn't change. Okay? Another thing you need to be aware of if you're going to do this is that you need to set the sort criteria, and it needs to use the score. Because when you perform a search, each returned item gets a score, and this determines the relevancy, how relevant the result the item is for the results. So the higher the score, the higher it should appear in the search results. And I do apologize for this sun. I need to sort something out with this. I need to put a curtain up here. Anyway, just search for search score and set the sort to sort descending. And then click on apply. And now, so if we do standard, if we don't enter in any keywords, we get that result. And then if we enter in a keyword, we should get a different result. Let me search for this one. All right, it's not working. Yay for live demos. Okay, let's test this out. Okay, let's remove authored by, so that's probably what we need to do. Okay, there you go. Make sure you remove the other sorts, so you only have a single sort in there. Because if we sort for other things, then everything works. Okay, you can see this change. Okay, now before we move on to Search API, I just want to quickly show you how to modify the core search results. I really should have done that before I jumped into this one. So let's go to an editor. And if you want to modify, so let me just quickly show you what I'll be modifying. Let's go back here. Oh, perfect. So stay the same. How do you actually modify these search results? Well, that's pretty easy. What you can do is go to PHP Storm or your editor of choice, go into core modules and search for search, and then templates, and you should see this search results. Okay? And this is just a basic twig template. And this is what's returned in this section. Okay? So if we were to simply copy this across, well, no, let me put it into Bartek. Now, if you're doing this on a proper site, don't just copy it into a core theme because the core theme will be overridden when you update it. So if you're doing it on a proper site, make sure you put in your proper theme. So I've put it here, my custom search template, just so that we know it's been picked up, and I'll just run cache rebuild. Just wait for a bit, and then if we go rebuild, now Drupal's just going crazy, rebuilding everything. You should see that. All right, perfect. Now our results. You can see our custom search. You can see our text has been added. So that is how you modify the search results. Now, depending on what you want to achieve, you may not have to modify this template. I personally always try and see if I can modify things using the pre-process. So you do have this template pre-process that you can hook into. Have a look and see if what you want to achieve can be achieved just by tweaking a few of these results. Because let's say you want to remove the, I don't know, say the snippet. No, that's a terrible example. Let's say you want to remove the user, okay? So the user would be this user here. Well, just override this process and then do an unset on this info user, and that's it. And that way, it saves you from overriding a template. Because I personally I only overwrite templates if, as a last resort. I like to always do things in the pre-process, especially for contrib modules, because the templates may change. And then if you've overridden them, you have an older version of the template, and then when you try and then when you update the module, and things may break. So I always like to use the pre-process first. Okay, so that is pretty much the core search module. Let's now have a look at Search API, okay? And now we're getting into more advanced topics. So what I'll first do is enable Search API. So I'll go into Extend, and I'll just search for Search API because I'll show you a few of the modules that ship with Search API. So you have the standard Search API module, okay, fair enough. And then you have Search API term handlers, that's a submodule. You have the database search, and this is a backend for Search API. And in Drupal 7, this was a separate module, whereas in Drupal 8, it's part of the core Search API module, which is good because most people used database search. And then you have the database search default submodule. So this submodule, when you enable it, configures a server and an index out of the box. And I highly recommend that you do this because, as I was mentioning, setting up Search API is a pain, honestly. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and you need to set things up properly. And if you want to see just how powerful Search API is, install this, and you have a working implementation of Search API. So let's just do this now and install it. And then just wait for Drupal to do its magic, going off and installing. And then once you've installed it, you can actually uninstall it because Drupal's configuration management system, the new CMI stuff, configuration gets set when you install the module. And then you can just disable it. And he actually recommends that. If you search for it, you will see he recommends, after installation, it is recommended to uninstall this module again for performance reasons. But we'll just leave it because this is a demo site. Now to configure Search API, you go into Configuration and then Search API. And you'll see these two options, Server and Index. If we edit the server, you can see that the database has been set as a backend. You can only, a server can only point to a single backend. So if you were to create an Elasticsearch server or an Apache Solr server, you would have to create multiple servers here. But you can have multiple servers. You can do that. That is allowed. But an index can only point to one backend. Okay? So that's a bit of, yeah. So just be aware of that. So here, if we edit the server, down here you have specific configuration for the server. For this database, it's pretty standard stuff, but if you were to use Elasticsearch or Apache Solr, you'll have a lot more options, like such as URLs or even a username and password or API keys or something, okay? Now let's go to our index. So this is where you spend a lot of time configuring things, okay? The first thing you'll notice is that you can select all your different entities or data sources. Essentially, they are the entities. But one thing which I haven't tested out, but just by playing around with it, I can see, well, that is technically available, is that you can index multiple entities and store them in the one index. This is a limitation of Search API. I think you could do it in Drupal 7. So what I mean by is that the Drupal 7 version of Search API only allowed you to index one entity type. Now, that's when you think about it at first, it's like, well, why would I want to index multiple entities? But there are instances where you may want to index a product entity if you're using Drupal Commerce, and also a product display, which is a node entity. And you want all of that, I don't know, for some reason, in the same index. This has actually been brought up when I've presented about Search API at the Drupal meetups. Now, by the looks of it, you can select multiple entities, but I haven't tested it out. So it is possible, I think. And then here you can select your different bundles. If you want, say, just article to be indexed, or if you want just basic page to be indexed, or if you want all of them to be indexed. And then down here, you have a few other options, your server, if it's enabled or not, and read-only or index items immediately. Now, one thing I will mention is this read-only one. Now, this read-only is more important when you use something such as Elasticsearch or Search API. And what this option helps to prevent is, just imagine, okay, you have a production site that's using Elasticsearch, and then you grab a copy of the production database locally because you're testing out a debug, you're trying to replicate a bug, and then if you were to modify a content and then you have these indexed items immediately, then Search API will track the fact that the content has been updated and then push the content up to Elasticsearch or Search API to be indexed. Now, you may have a situation where your local changes are getting indexed into the production index. And so when somebody searches from your production site, they are pulling in results that kind of like skewed results, or something just may not look right because you are updating content into your production index, and then your production site is pointing to the production index. So often what I do is I just set this to read only, just because I don't want to break things in the production index. But if that does happen, the only thing you need to do is re-index everything. But if you have a million nodes, that could take time. So just be aware of that. This read-only becomes, the option only becomes useful if you're dealing with Apache Solr or Search API or something like that. Now, the next section of Search API is the field section. This is where you specify which fields will be part of the index. So if you have a content type with, say, 20 fields or even 30 fields, I've seen content types with many fields, you may want to you may not want to index everything because you may not want to search on everything. Okay, so here you control what fields get indexed, and this is kind of the bare basic: title, created, created, changed, the status. And if you want to have a search page which filters by the publishing status, if it's published or not, then you need to index the status. Or if you want to order the search results by the created date, then the date needs to be indexed. Okay, so just be aware of that. So at first, you may put in a few fields, but as you are building out your pages, you will occasionally just add in a few more fields as you're building things out and testing things. If you want to add in more fields, just click on Add Fields and then go Content, and then you can add in all of these fields. And you can even drill down into things and drill right down into what you want, into other fields and other entity types, and it goes all the way down. So let's go back. And the last section of the Search API index is the processes. Now, this is where a lot of magic happens. And this is something that you would have to configure from scratch if you don't install this default module. So this is why I highly recommend that you install this module purely for these processes. So you can see here that there are a whole bunch of processes, and these I think are just plugins, so you can write your own. But you can have processes that exclude unpublished nodes from the node index, add in content access, do tokenization. That's just like an indexing process and things like that. This is probably a whole webinar on its own because there's a lot of moving parts to it, and also when things happen. So you can process your data just before the index, just before the query, and also post-process the query as well. So once everything's been set up, okay, if you come to view, you can kind of see a status of of everything. And you can see that nothing has been indexed. So let's just quickly run index now. And just give it a second. It won't take that long, I promise. It's going to start. It's initializing. There we go, halfway done. And just give it a bit more time. Come on. All right, perfect. So the index now has been indexed, which is good. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly show you how the index is shown to the user. And it's done through a custom search. A custom view. Let me just quickly find it. Where is it? Here we go. So search/content. So if we search for piece of content, it is returned. Now, I must admit, these results can be fixed up. You would want something like a summary search or like a keyword results to appear so that your keywords are highlighted and things like that. And so you would have to modify this a bit more, but it is pretty cool to be able to use views to create these type of things. So if we edit the view, it's pulling content out, not from like nodes, but from the actual index. So if you're using something such as Apache Solr or Elasticsearch, you could have views pulling content out directly from those systems and not using the database at all. And for large websites, I have seen websites use Apache Solr to simply list out content for their homepage, because Apache Solr is much faster, especially if you've set it up properly, is much faster than your database. So I've seen it often where people use Search API and then views with Search API and storing the content in Apache Solr. It's kind of like a document repository system. But the thing you just have to be aware of is that just means that you have an extra thing that could possibly go wrong. So if your Apache Solr instances go down, then your whole website stops working. Whereas if you're using Apache Solr just for the search results and not for listing out content on the homepage, then your search doesn't work. But if you are using it to list out blocks on your homepage, then you need to make sure that the infrastructure for Apache Solr is rock solid. And I've seen situations where people would use, awesome hosting for the Drupal site, but then they'll just spin up a cheap EC2 instance, like an Amazon EC2 instance, purely for Search API, and then forget about it. And then something breaks, and then something breaks on their site, or their site stops rendering, and they're like, why is the site not working? And they realize that, our Apache Solr instance is down, or something like that. So just be aware that if you are going to use Apache Solr or Elasticsearch, make sure it's on good infrastructure. Okay, so the last thing I'll show you, I'm just looking at my list here, is facets. So let's configure our facets. Let's go into, first we need to install the module. So let's go and install the module and search for facets. And one thing you can do is you can use facets for the core search module, but I had a bit of trouble getting it working. Maybe I just wasn't using it properly, but you can use facets on your core search module. Whereas previously in like Drupal 6 and 7, in Drupal 6 especially, if you wanted facets, you had to use Apache Solr. Whereas in Drupal 7, you could use faceted search with Search API in the database search. But for Drupal 8, essentially, you won't have to use Search API to get facets. You can use a core search module, which is pretty cool. So let's just install facets. And then just wait for everything to finish installing. All right, cool. And then go into configuration. And you should see facets right down at the bottom. And here you can control all of your facets. Now, the first thing you need to be aware of is that whenever you create an index, it'll set it up as a facet source, because the facet needs to know where the index is stored. Okay, so that's why this facet source just automatically appeared here, because facets has integration with Search API. So let's create a facet. We'll select our facet source, and then we'll select our field, and I'll select tags because I know that's working. And then let's just click on save. And there's a lot of configuration here. Okay, trust me, there's a lot. But let's just leave this as it is for now. Let's just scroll down to the bottom and hit save. And what we'll need to do is now add the facet to the block region. So click on structure, block layout, and search for sidebar first. And then I'll just search for tags, facets, and then make sure the category is facets so that you know that it's from the facets module. And then select facet tags, and then just click on save block. And then hit save. So now if we go to, what was that? Search/content. You will see that you will see our facet appearing, and also the tags are appearing because results are returning. But if we search for something, this should change. There you go. Symfony is first, Drupal, WordPress, Joomla. Where if we search for, like previously, it was just WordPress, Drupal, and Symfony. Now, one thing that I like to add on to my faceted search is a count. So how many results? Okay, and you can do that just by editing the facet. So just another top tip: you can come in this way and edit the facet, and then just click on show the amount of results. And then now you can actually see the results for this particular term. So we know that 22 results have returned that have been tagged as WordPress. So if I type in a keyword, you can see now 20 results have been returned for Symfony. And if we go back into Facet, you can see that there's a lot of configuration here. You have different widgets. I do know in Drupal 7, as I was mentioning in the intro, you have different facet types. You even have a slider. So if you're creating like a product page, you can do all these awesome sliders and stuff like that. So the facets module, yeah, is pretty powerful. Okay, so I think that is it. I'm just looking at my list. We are at the 43-minute mark, which is smack bang on time. I actually thought this webinar would be less, but it's on perfect time. Okay, no, that's it. Okay, so any questions before we finish up? Any Search API questions, or just any search questions in general? Let me bring up the chat. All right. Going once, going twice. Did you guys enjoy this webinar? Yes. All right, cool. Thanks. I do know it was a bit different to the other webinars. When the other webinars, I would actually build something, but in this one, I just kind of showed you bits and pieces. Okay, so just the first questions. So the first question is, why is the internal search so basic? Okay, I would assume that's basic. Well, that's because, search is a very difficult thing to do. And I often have this conversation. I have this conversation every single time I build up a Drupal site. And the conversation goes like this. The client uses the search, but mind you, the search is always built towards the end of the project, and everyone just rushes in. And the client uses the search and goes, oh, but Ivan, when I use Google, I can do this. And straight away, I have to tell them nicely. And I have to tell them, look, Google is a $1 billion company with thousands and thousands of engineers. They can build awesome search pages, but you're not going to get this type of functionality with your search page. And so at first you may think search is simple, but every site has their own little nuances, has their own little particular things. And I experience this often where the client will say, well, when I search for this, I want this page to appear. But then you have a look at the page and you notice that none of the keywords that they're searching for are even in the title. And you have to tell them, and you have to kind of train up the client on how search works. So yes, this core search is pretty basic, and that's why I just recommend using Search API. But if you can get away with the core search, just use it, set and forget. But when you are estimating Drupal projects, do not just have a little line in there saying search, 2 hours, Spend a bit of time, figure out exactly what they mean by search, because everyone's definition of search is very different. And I have been bitten so many times where, oh yeah, the client said they want search, and straight away they use it and like, I want this, and this. It's like, why isn't this working? It's like, well, you didn't tell us that's how you want it working. So yeah, just be aware that if you're estimating, keep it simple. And that's why I just use Search API. Spend the time to learn Search API because it is the standard way of building complex searches in Drupal 8. And I've used other CMSs and there's nothing like Search API. There's nothing like Search API. Okay, just another question. Are the webinars available online? They are available online if you go to... So I don't have an actual page on WebWash that shows all the webinars. I should do that. But if you go to the YouTube channel, there should be a playlist of all the... there's probably not even a playlist of webinars. Anyway, if you go to the YouTube channel and just search for any video, or the WebWash YouTube channel, and just search for anything that has like webinar : those are all the webinars. At this point, there's only 4 webinars and they'll be right at the top. But I will create probably this weekend a page on WebWash and have a nice little thing up the top to promote all the other webinars. Okay. So does a search need to be executed before the facets display? Yes. And the reason for that is that the facet needs the result to figure out what facets should be displayed. So it's kind of like a chicken and the egg problem. And that's why you have to specify a facet source. Without the source, the facet doesn't know what to return. So if you want to display a facet first, you could essentially just hide the results, but you still need to run the results, if you know what I mean. So you can hide it, but essentially you still need to run the index, pull out the results, and then the facet will search in the facet source and then pull out the available terms. But with a bit of custom code, well, I say a bit, I mean, with a fair bit of custom code, you can do it where if you want to display facets first, and then people can kind of drill down, because I know what you mean, where you want to display the facets first and then you want to allow users to drill down and then offer some type of search page. All right, great presentation. Thank you. Some recommendations on autocomplete? Yeah, there is. Okay, so let's have a look. Search autocomplete. I should have put that in. Autocomplete Drupal. There is a search autocomplete. There is a Search API autocomplete. As you can see, there's a whole ton of them. You gotta love Drupal. Oh my. Yeah. Okay, there's a ton of them. So I would look at, if you're using Search API, look at Search API autocomplete. So this one, is there a Drupal 8 version? Oh, there is. Amazing. There's a stable Drupal 8 version of this one. I love this. I think this is the first webinar where I've shown a lot of modules that have stable versions for Drupal 8. So have a look at this. Actually, I will keep this because I will add this to the email that I send everyone. So excuse me, I'll just pop this in. And when I send the email, and I'll be sending the email a bit later today, but I will send it, I'll send out these links in the email. Actually, and I'll pop this into chat as well. So have a look at those. And so Search API, Search API has an alpha, unfortunately, alpha 1, but it's there. Have a look at it. For Drupal 7, this is the way to do it. This is the way to do autocomplete, but I've had mixed experiences with autocomplete because it just doesn't, I don't know, sometimes it just doesn't work exactly the way you want it to work. And especially in this day and age now where a lot of this autocomplete stuff, happens in JavaScript, and especially now with React and Angular and all these other, Vue.js, you often deal with front-end people that want to just do everything in React, and Drupal's Ajax system can be a bit slow sometimes, where sometimes it's just faster to use React, but it also depends how you're doing your search stuff. But if you want to look at it, check it out if it works for you.